Have you ever heard someone say they'd happily pay 5 times more for a TV license while millions of people are struggling with the cost of living? Well, that's exactly what former BBC star Emily Maitlis has done. And as you can imagine, it didn't take long for the internet to explode. Emily Maitlis, one of the BBC's most recognisable former journalists, and now the co-host of the Newsagents podcast, is facing heavy criticism after saying she would gladly pay the BBC licence fee 5 times over if it meant protecting quality broadcasting. Her comments have landed at one of the worst possible moments, with households across the UK already feeling squeezed by rising bills and inflation. Earlier this year, the UK government confirmed that the annual BBC TV licence fee would increase by £5.50, bringing the total to £180 a year. For many families, that announcement was frustrating enough. So when Maitlis suggested she'd happily pay 5 times that amount, many people felt she was completely out of touch with what ordinary viewers are experiencing. Now, to be fair, that's not exactly what she meant. In an interview with Radio Times, she explained that she remains a huge supporter of the BBC and believes public service broadcasting is incredibly valuable. She even described BBC Radio 4 as part of her daily routine and said she'd be lost without it. At the same time, she also offered an interesting criticism of her former employer. Maitlis argued that the BBC isn't very good at keeping talented people and admitted that working outside the corporation actually gives journalists more freedom. She pointed out that when your salary isn't funded directly by licence fee payers, every editorial decision isn't constantly scrutinised through the lens of public funding. Personally, I think that's one of the more interesting parts of this story. Her criticism of the BBC's internal culture raises legitimate questions about how the organisation operates. But unfortunately for her, those comments have been almost completely overshadowed by one sentence about paying the licence fee 5 times over. And that's because context matters. Whether she intended it or not, many people heard those words as coming from someone who earns far more than the average household. When families are choosing between heating their homes, paying mortgages, or buying groceries, suggesting that paying hundreds of pounds more each year would be acceptable simply doesn't resonate with a lot of viewers. The backlash on social media was swift. Users on X criticised her remarks, with some calling for the BBC to be completely defunded, while others used much harsher language to express their frustration. The reaction shows just how divisive the licence fee remains in Britain. What's particularly fascinating is that this controversy comes at a time when the BBC itself is undergoing one of its biggest restructuring efforts in years. The corporation is trying to save around £500 million through sweeping cost-cutting measures. That plan includes around 2,000 job cuts over the next 3 years. In the first phase alone, the BBC has announced hundreds of job losses across its news division. Several well-known radio programmes are being cancelled. Sunday morning editions of BBC Breakfast are ending, production teams are being merged, and even flagship news programmes are seeing major changes in staffing and presentation. When you look at the bigger picture, you can understand why emotions are running so high. On one hand, supporters argue that the BBC remains one of the world's most respected public broadcasters and deserves stable funding. On the other hand, critics question whether viewers should continue paying a mandatory licence fee when the organisation is reducing services, cutting jobs, and facing increasing competition from streaming platforms and digital media. Emily Maitlis herself remains one of the BBC's most famous former faces. Many viewers still remember her unforgettable 2019 Newsnight interview with Prince Andrew, a conversation that dramatically changed public opinion and became one of the defining interviews in modern British television. But this latest controversy reminds us that public figures don't just have to choose their words carefully, they also have to consider the timing. Even a comment intended to praise the BBC can quickly become a lightning rod when people are under financial pressure. So what do you think? Is Emily Maitlis simply defending an institution she genuinely values, or do her comments show how disconnected some media personalities have become from the financial reality facing ordinary people? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this update, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next story.